Luke or Anakin, the Jedi Chosen One turned Sith Lord, or his son, who would one day turn his father back to the light and free the galaxy from the clutches of the Empire. Skywalker versus Skywalker, father versus son. Two warriors of equal genetic potential. They were cut from the same cloth, fueled by similar values, even trained by the same masters. Before his turn to the dark side, Anakin was primed to become the greatest of all the Jedi, but his ascension was cut short by the deception of Darth Sidious. The emergence of Darth Vader alone did not crush his potential to become the most powerful being the galaxy had ever seen. Rather, it was the specific events of Vader's ascension that would cripple him forever. The injuries he sustained on Mustafar would haunt Darth Vader for the rest of his life, and despite his determination to overcome his failures on that day, he would never be the same. But his son did not share his father's restrictions. With the same midichlorian count that his father once had living in his cells, Luke Skywalker would become what Anakin should have been. He would succeed where his father failed. And for many years, he did just that. Not only did Luke bring his father back to the light in a successful effort to free the galaxy from the pain and tyranny of the dark side, but he would then go on to rebuild the Jedi Order. More than 20 years would pass after the events of Return of the Jedi, in which Luke Skywalker would continue to develop his skills, expand his knowledge, and master his own power. He would become the new Grand Master of the Jedi Order. But his refusal to suffer his father's fate is ultimately what would lead to his own downfall. When Luke allows his darkness to shine through, and his actions in that moment directly cause his nephew, Ben Solo, to turn to the dark side, Luke does not stick around to fight or to right his wrongs. Instead, he goes into exile, severs his connection to the Force, and endures 7 long years of self-induced solitude. In doing this, Luke prevents himself from achieving his full potential. But we cannot ignore Luke's age at the time he went into exile. At this point, Luke had already doubled Anakin's age when he turned to the dark side and surpassed his father's age at the time he died as well. But who was more powerful, Luke or Anakin? This debate is a bit different than our other comparisons because we have never seen Luke Skywalker's peak on screen. So in order to compare these two characters, we have no choice really but to draw our own conclusions based on the implications of the information we do have. Anakin is all set. We have seen his power on full display both in the movies and in the Clone Wars TV series, which fills in those gaps. But Luke's life between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens is shrouded in mystery. We have some idea of what he was up to, and we've gotten a small taste of his power in The Mandalorian, and also in the closing moments of The Last Jedi, but there's still a whole lot of time there where we simply don't know what was going on. So what is the true extent of Luke Skywalker's power? In order to make a fair comparison, we have to select a specific time period to evaluate these characters, and with that being said, we will choose the time periods that I think their skills are most clearly on display. For this particular comparison, we are not evaluating Darth Vader, but Anakin Skywalker. And I don't think there's any question that Anakin's peak was achieved in Revenge of the Sith. And in Luke's case, while he almost certainly was much more powerful in The Last Jedi than he was in The Mandalorian, we didn't get to see him display much of that power in the movie, so we will be going with the Luke Skywalker who appeared in the finale of Season 2 of The Mandalorian. Now, before we really start to get into this, let me make a few things clear. In my opinion, Darth Vader is more powerful than Anakin Skywalker, and I am also of the belief that at some point after the events of The Mandalorian, likely right around the time Ben Solo turned to the dark side, was the point at which Luke Skywalker reached the height of his power. And at that point, I think Luke will have far surpassed any version of his father. Granted, this is not something we have seen on screen, at least not yet, but the implication certainly seems to be that Luke Skywalker came much closer to reaching his maximum potential than Anakin did, thanks primarily to his physical health and functionality. And so for that reason, we will be evaluating Mandalorian Luke Skywalker. And with that being said, let's kick things off by comparing the experience levels of Luke and Anakin at these times. In Revenge of the Sith, Anakin is roughly 22 or 23 years old. He has had well over a decade of proper Jedi training under Obi-Wan Kenobi, and has comfortably established himself as one of the finest Jedi Knights in the Order. He has been granted a seat on the Jedi Council, taken on an apprentice of his own in Ahsoka Tano, and Obi-Wan does tell him that he will soon be granted the rank of Master. On the other hand, we have Luke, who is now about 28 years old, 5 years older than Anakin, making him the more mature, more independent of the two, but he has only had a very short time of training under Obi-Wan and Yoda before they transcended into the Force, and then of course he has continued to be guided by the Force ghosts of Yoda, Obi-Wan, and Anakin in the 5 or 6 years between Return of the Jedi and The Mandalorian. All in all, still a considerable amount of experience, but less than his father. And because Anakin was trained at a time when the Jedi were operating near peak levels, it would be easy to say that he was likely granted better training overall. But I would actually argue that the opposite is true here. Because Luke and Anakin were trained by the same masters, Obi-Wan and Yoda, both of whom had now gained far more experience and foresight following the fall of the Jedi Order, not to mention the fact that Luke has also probably gotten his fair share of guidance from Anakin at this point as well. So with this information, I feel comfortable in saying that given his age, his training, and the responsibility to carry the Jedi Order squarely on his shoulders, which to this point he has handled presumably well, it is Luke who takes the advantage of wisdom and knowledge of the Force at this point. But now we move on to the more tangible categories of lightsaber skills and strength in the Force. When it comes to their ability to wield a lightsaber, we don't have a lot to go off of with Luke, but he did manage to best Darth Vader in Return of the Jedi, although Vader may not have been giving his all in that fight due to his rising internal conflict. And then of course we did get a flash of Luke's potential in The Mandalorian, where he moves with a newfound level of agility and skill, which we had not previously seen. In this moment, as Luke Skywalker annihilates an entire platoon of Dark Troopers, he shows a side of himself which we had not yet seen from him. He chops through these droids who clearly showed just how formidable they were earlier in the episode with almost no effort. He's toying with them, hardly even breaking a sweat as he patiently and methodically makes his way toward Grogu. And regardless of the opponent, this scene was a testament to the insane power of Luke Skywalker in this time period. However, it is also necessary to point out that droids of any level are simply not worthy opponents for a fully trained Jedi Knight, especially not a Skywalker. And it's also worth noting that a lot of what Luke does in this scene is centered around what he does with the Force more than it is about his skills with a lightsaber, so stash what we've just covered about this scene away for a moment while we shift gears to take a look at Luke's father, Anakin, whose body of work more than speaks for itself. In Revenge of the Sith alone, Anakin defeats one of the deadliest lightsaber duelists in the galaxy in Count Dooku, and then stands toe-to-toe with Obi-Wan Kenobi, who was also recognized among the greatest lightsaber duelists in the Jedi Order. Obi-Wan does eventually win this duel, but, you know, he had the high ground, and we all know that's just not even fair. Seriously though, although he did lose this duel, Vader's performance in that fight is really a testament to his skill rather than a knock against him. And this is all not even to mention anything else he accomplishes prior to the events of Revenge of the Sith, where his resume expands so drastically it would be nearly impossible to cover it all in one video. So fair or not, I think the only logical conclusion here is to say that Anakin was the better lightsaber duelist, both for the reasons I just mentioned and because he was trained at a time when lightsaber combat was far more prevalent than when Luke is around, meaning that Anakin's exposure to this sort of fighting is far greater than Luke's, not to mention that Luke doesn't have a sparring partner, at least not until he takes Leia as his apprentice, which only lasts for maybe a few years at the most, while Anakin sparred day in and day out with Obi-Wan Kenobi. So for me, based on what we have seen, it's only fair to give Anakin the edge in lightsaber dueling skills, and honestly, it may not even be that close. But now we move on to the final category for these two, the one that's probably the most important in determining who was the more effective Jedi overall. So what happens when we take lightsabers out of the equation and look solely at these characters' ability to wield the Force, to call on it for guidance, and to use it as a weapon of its own? Again, Anakin has had more training overall, but Luke has been trained by more experienced Force wielders. And although it seems almost impossible, he has not only been presented with even higher expectations and greater responsibilities than Anakin, but he has also handled them. He has succeeded where Anakin once failed, resisting the temptations of the dark side, showing a greater control over his emotions and thus over the Force itself as well. We're going to leave specific feats out of this discussion because a lot of that is simply up for one's own interpretation, and both of them have displayed their fair share of powers. But in saying that, there's no need to delay my conclusion. Although this matchup is close, I believe Luke Skywalker has edged Anakin at this point in his life. I believe he is both the wiser and the more powerful wielder of the Force, and is probably nipping at the heels of the greatest of all the Jedi and Sith. He's not there yet. I still believe that Yoda and Palpatine have a definitive edge over Luke at this stage, but depending on how things played out for him from this point, Luke may well have become the most powerful Force user of all time. There is one small problem with that line of thinking though. Luke lost his apprentice to Palpatine, and he himself was also deceived by the Emperor and consequently went into exile, which for me, although there is no hard proof, might suggest that Palpatine remains the king of all Force wielders in the physical realm. I do get the feeling in The Last Jedi that Luke, like his father, did fail to reach his full potential, and that really is what fits the storyline the best in my opinion as well. But hey, only time will tell. I have to believe that in the coming years we will get to see more of Luke Skywalker in between episodes 6 and 7, and then when it's all said and done, when we fully understand Luke's story, perhaps we will be able to more accurately reassess this conversation. But that of course is another topic for another time, so that's going to wrap things up for this video. It is my belief that Luke Skywalker has grown more powerful by the time of The Mandalorian than his father was at the time he turns to the dark side, and if he continues to trend in that direction, the possibilities are unimaginable. Luke is a truly balanced Force user. He is committed to the light. Whereas with Anakin, even before he turns to the dark side, there's always conflict. And I've talked about this on the channel before. A Force user who is torn between the dark side and the light is not operating at full potential. Even for the power that they do have available to them, no matter what level that is, any internal turmoil is holding them back from becoming what they were meant to be, from achieving their full potential. And at this point, there is no conflict in Luke. The same cannot be said about Anakin. So let me know what you guys think in the comments section below. Who do you think was more powerful between Luke and Anakin at these points in their lives? And how powerful do you think Luke became before the rise of Kylo Ren? If you enjoyed this video, please remember to leave a like to support the channel, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and of course, may the Force be with you always.